Well, we have some new information. A U.S. airstrike in Yemen killing a former Guantanamo Bay detainee who returned to terrorism. U.S. intel estimates that about 30% of all former Gitmo prisoners have gone back to the battlefield, or they're suspected at least of doing so. Now, Jonathan Schanzer is the vice president of research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and former terrorism analyst at the Treasury Department. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about this stepped-up campaign first. Let's begin there. There have been, 40 attacks across central and southern Yemen in just the past week. You can compare that to 2012, where there were 41 total. This is something that President Trump promised would happen. Why the stepped-up campaign?
Well, I think two reasons right now. Number one is that AQAP, Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula, this is the affiliate group of Al-Qaeda in Yemen. They are by far the most dangerous Al-Qaeda affiliate, the most inclined to attack the United States. Of course, the Nusra Front, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the affiliate group in Syria, is larger and potentially more active, but they have made a conscious decision to turn inward, whereas the group in Yemen is still dedicated to attacking the United States. So there is the intent of this group that I think we're now seeing, at least an attempt to try to mitigate that. But then there's also the raid that took place several weeks ago.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The latest raid apparently killed a Gitmo detainee who was released back in 2009, I believe it was Yasir al-Simi. So what does that tell you in reference to all of the Gitmo detainees who are being released or have been?
Yeah, look, it shows that you have got a roughly 20 to 30% chance of recidivism of these detainees returning to the battlefield. We always knew that this was going to be a problem. This was the worst of the worst that were being held in Guantanamo Bay. And certainly as those numbers have dwindled, I think the chances are higher that people return to the battlefield. So we've gone from roughly 700 down to about 40. Those 40 right now are about the nastiest you're going to see.
Yeah, and al-Simi was flagged as high risk. Let's move now to Iran and what is happening there. We have these Iranian ships, one of which came within 150 yards of our Navy ships. Some of the smaller boats came within 600 yards. What are they up to?
Well, they've been doing this for quite some time now. This was certainly common during the Obama years, where they were testing the patience of our military, testing the patience of our leadership. I think now they're trying to get a sense of whether Donald Trump has the stomach for this, how he might respond. And so I think this is going to be a moment of truth for the Trump administration. They need to respond to Iran. They need to make sure that these things don't happen in international waterways.
Well, now, he did respond to Iran in terms of the medium-range ballistic missile that was fired off last month. We also reported just this past weekend that they test-fired a pair of ballistic missiles. He responded with economic sanctions. Was that enough?
No, it's not. I mean, look, the sanctions that were passed, it's a terrific move, obviously, but, it was just one small network. There is a broader network, and I think the real response is to start to go after the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. There's a push right now inside Washington to designate them entirely as a terrorist organization. These are the people who are behind the ballistic missiles, but also terrorism and the stranglehold on the Iranian economy. So I think this is hopefully the next move.
Okay, speaking of the economy, just briefly, let's talk about this. We have China, a Chinese company. At the same time all of this is going on, they're actually sending prohibited items to Iran and North Korea. What items are we talking about?
Well, this is primarily communications. This is technology items. And the point here is that they were doing this without a license. There are export controls imposed by commerce, and there are regulations imposed by the U.S. government. The Chinese government did this in a bid to circumvent sanctions, to provide the Iranians and North Koreans with things that they should not have. I think this is obviously a terrific first step, but really what we want to see now is a focus on Chinese banks, specifically those that have been helping the North Koreans over the last several years. And so we're hoping now that this might be the beginning of a new trend in focusing on Chinese companies and banks that are helping the bad guys circumvent sanctions.
Yeah, we always hear follow the money. Jonathan Schanzer, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.